Yes, it's been a rough week for elders. And I tell you, I wrestled with my message and it about got me down. No. Welcome, those of you who are tuning in. They'll probably cut this out so you won't know what we're laughing about. But I had a little problem yesterday. I fell down in my garage and scratched my head up and my nose, and I think that wasn't bad enough. I was trying to get out of the house to get to services, and I tripped twice trying to get out of the house. It was a rough week. But they're not, it's superficial, nothing broken, at least on my end. Victor's okay. I don't know anybody else. No, we'll pray about it. We're glad to be here. I'm glad to be here, and I know everybody that is. Good to see you. Happy Sabbath. I've got a little message I want to share with you today. We are post-Feast of Tabernacles, and so we tend to not forget, but put the ideas of the holy days and the plan of God a little bit to the back burner, still on the stove, but on the back burner to say something about it. And it's a time of new beginnings. We can start out fresh on a lot of different things, and two things that you might think about. One is start saving your festival tithe for the next year. Right? Because it's a lot better feast when you got money and when you've saved up for that. And secondly, it's time to plan a program for spiritual growth. And you can do that yourself. And while new endeavors can be exciting and stimulating, one of the most frightening aspects about starting new endeavors is that we've never done them before. You know, you've never done it before. And sometimes that leads us to discouragement. One of the things that can be discouraging we find in Matthew 5, verse 48, if we let it. Becoming perfect. New Christians can become especially discouraged when they begin to realize what is required of them. So let's look at Matthew 5, verse 48. Matthew 5, 48. It says, be you or become therefore perfect, even as your Father who is in heaven is perfect. Now that's heavy stuff. I don't care who you are to look at that and think, how do I become perfect as my Father in heaven? The realization that we are to become perfect can be a little more than unsettling. And realizing how imperfect we are can be very discouraging. But take heart. God is not, or does not expect us to be perfect now, today. Strong's Concordance gives a little background into the word perfect as it's used there, and it means that it's brought to its end, it's finished, wanting nothing necessary to completeness. Perfect. The word perfect, as used in the Bible with reference to men, does not refer to sinless perfection. Sinless perfection. For example, there are several Old Testament characters that are described as perfect and were obviously not sinless. God does not expect us to have a sinless perfection and to achieve that in this life. But sinless perfection will not come until we are changed from inherently carnal human beings to spirit-born sons of God. For now, God looks on the attitude. What's our attitude? What's our attitude towards God, towards overcoming, towards being at the right distance from the microphone? Thank you, David. In 1 Samuel 16, verse 7 says, 1 Samuel 16, verse 7 tells us that the Lord sees not as a man sees, for man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. You look on the outward appearance of Mr. Howe and I today, and you can tell something's happened. But God's working on the inside, making real change and real things possible. So today, what I'd like to do with you is share a principle that will help defeat the kind of discouragement which can keep us from rising to meet the challenge of new endeavors and can hinder us from completing things that we begin. You don't like the way my voice sounds today, do you? All right, we will continue. You're probably familiar with some variation of the sayings, if something is worth doing, it's worth doing right, or with all of your might. Or if you're going to be a ditch digger, be the best ditch digger you can be. They're loosely based on Ecclesiastes 9, verse 10. Ecclesiastes 9, verse 10 says, "Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might. For there's no work or device or knowledge or wisdom in the grave where you are going." Today I want you to understand and remember the other side of the coin of this principle. You know I'm a bit of a contrarian. I like to look at the other side of the coin and see what's over there and how it would apply, as well as the obverse. I look at the reverse. I hope I said that right. The head and then the tail. So today I wanted to talk with you about this. If something is worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. If something's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly at first. Its attitude is what counts as we begin them. I'll give you 3 examples which illustrate this principle. In 1977, late 77, Jackie and I moved to Chicago to be involved with my father's business, and of course we attended a new church for us back there, Worldwide Church of God still, in I can't remember the town, the name of it, where it was, but anyway, we were back there for almost 3 years, and one of the things that became an opportunity for me is Hinsdale, Illinois. Is the church congregation still meeting in the same place, I understand. Anyway, the pastor wanted me to begin song leading. I said, I've never song led before. Nobody's ever taught me, I don't know what to do. Yeah, you'll get it, he said. So we come to schedule. We had a combined service one day with Arlington, which is the North Church in Chicago, and Hinsdale. And so there were 400 or 500 people, a pretty good crowd for the first time I ever led songs. And I got up there and made my way through it. Got to the end and went to the man who was essentially in charge of overseeing sound, special music, song leading, that sort of thing. And I asked him, so how did I do? He said, well, I guess I've seen worse. But I don't remember when. Thank you. Cheered me right up. No, he had expectations for things to be nearly perfect because that's the way he did them. And nice guy. He later on was ordained an elder, and actually we were in a speaking class. What do we call that? A word fitly spoken. And several elders were on Zoom, and we submitted sermons, and we get evaluated by each of the other elders that were on this speech assignment. And he was on with me. And I told him about this, reminded him, and he said, I don't remember that at all. And I'm sorry for doing that. And I said, it's okay, because, our friend, mine and his, had another friend named Barbush, John Barbush. He was also a professional musician and played songs and played special music and played in several bands and around Chicago. And he got me aside And we talked a little bit, and I said, John, can you help me? I don't mind looking like a fool once, but I'd rather not do it again. And so John took me aside and showed me how to lead a 3/4 song and a 4/4 song, and I practiced in the car, at home, any place there was music on. I would count off the beats and just practice all day long, every chance I got. And I finally got to where I was a pretty good song leader. And then arthritis got in my shoulder and makes it hard to get up there and do it. But at any rate, I became a pretty good song leader, but it took a while. And at first, you see, I was doing it poorly. But my attitude was right, and that was the important thing. I kept at it. I looked for encouragement and looked for help, which encouraged me, and I went on to lead songs for 30-odd years. The second example I want to share with you in this regard is a parable of the Pharisee and the publican in Luke 18. Luke 18, we'll read verses 9 through 14. Luke 18, beginning in verse 9. You know, this is where the parable of the Pharisee and the publican have come to give an offering and to pray, and so that's what we're kind of breaking into the thought here, but it's concerning his prayer. Verse 9, also he spoke this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. This is Jesus speaking. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. There was hardly anything considered lower than a tax collector in Israel and Judea in those days. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this tax collector here. I fast twice in the week, I give tithes of all that I possess. And the tax collector, standing far off, would not so much as raise his eyes to heaven, but he beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Verse 14, Jesus says, I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. The difference was in their attitudes. The Pharisee thought he was doing it right. He knew he had all the do's and don'ts in a list to follow and knew what he was supposed to do, and he was doing those. Tax collector didn't. Tax collector couldn't even get into the synagogue or the temple. He'd have to be standing outside to offer in his prayers or his money, either one. But their attitudes was the big thing. The Pharisee thought he was doing right, and he was proud of it. The publican, on the other hand, knew that he was doing it poorly, and he was humble about it and asked God to be merciful to him. The third example, I meant to have a prop today. I was bringing it, my guitar. It was going to sit right here. And I tripped twice trying to bring it out of the house. I left it on the floor the second time. Just stay there. I'll make it up. Make it up. See it? Oh, it's over there. Okay. All right. Oh, that's right. There is one over there in the corner. That's not mine, though. But in 1978, I was back in Chicago once again. And we formed a little band. And John Barbush was a musician. And we had a fiddle player and a guitar player who was a professional, a flautist. She played with us. And another guy on keyboard, and John played drums and trombone. And I played rhythm guitar and sang a little bit. They were pretty good. I wasn't very good. I bought a guitar, though, that was a really good guitar. Glenn Campbell played with it. John Denver played with them. Lots of people played with Ovation acoustic electric guitars. And it was about $1,000, which was a pretty good investment for 1978. I bought it. Oh, I don't know how much it carries. It's not mine now. But this is a prop. It'll work. Thank you, David, helping me out all the way. I bought it with $125 that I had saved in silver coins. I had $125 worth of silver coins. I went and sold them for $1,000, got my guitar and carrying case, and off I went. It kind of reminds me, I don't know how many of you are invested in silver and gold or anything like that, and this is probably a comment made as much in ignorance as anything that I'm going to say today. But I listen to silver commercials, and I hear them say, if silver only rises to its highest point in the past, you'll make a lot of money. And I think, what happened to the guy that bought it up at that price now and he's holding it down here? He's got to make all this up before he even makes any money. So, I don't know. You guys buy silver. I don't know what I'll buy. I'll buy bourbon. No, it's not a good investment, but it's good for after church. Anyway, so I saved up silver coins for several years, and I had $125 worth, and I bought that guitar, and we had a church band there in Chicago, and we played a couple of dances and so forth. But coming back here to San Diego in 1980, we formed another little group with some people in the Escondido Church as well as the San Diego Church, and played a couple of church dances, and just a lot of practice. I'd been learning to play guitar for about 7 years, and starting when I was stationed in Okinawa. Now, in Okinawa, you've heard me talk about Okinawa before. I don't know if I've ever told you that basically there was not much to do on that island of Okinawa. The off-base attractions were on two particular streets that were named, what was it? Bad Conduct, BC Street. It was called BC Street. It was Bad Conduct, and every kind of sin that you wanted was down that road. And the other one, I don't remember. I wasn't on either one of them, but I remember that they were there. And so you had to find things to occupy your time if you were not going to do that. In the daylight, bought a motorcycle, rode dirt in the dirt tracks. We built a motocross track on our base so we could ride motorcycles. But at night, there wasn't anything to do. One station radio, one station TV, which is Armed Forces, and I decided, I got this time, I might as well try and learn to play guitar. So I went down and bought a cheap guitar, and wish I'd bought a better one because my fingers got so sore with the fretting on it. But bought that guitar. A guy from Louisiana moved in, got assigned with us, and was in the next room in the barracks. And he played guitar, and he played good. And he showed me chords and how to make noise. And I practiced and practiced and practiced till my fingers were literally numb to the second joint. I just kept practicing. I wanted to play. Well, even after 7 years, I was still far from being perfect and not an expert guitarist. I could play for what I refer to as for friends and grins. You know, just a little fun, sitting around, drinking a beer, playing whatever, but no professional. Why wasn't I better than that after 7 years? Well, you've probably heard this, but there are experts who are reportedly know what they're talking about, say that to achieve professional quality at something like playing a musical instrument or playing tennis or golf or something, basically anything that you want, takes about 10,000 hours of practice. 10,000 hours of practice. I didn't want to commit that much time to learn to play the guitar. That's a lot of time. It just simply wasn't worth it to me. Now, it may be for some of you are professional magicians. Well, that too. Musicians. And if it's worth it to you, pursue it. There is something that is worth it, and we'll get to that point. But to me, it just wasn't worth putting that much time into. So I developed this principle that may have, I don't know, claim to be the originator of it, but I latched onto it, that not everything that you do is worth being the best you can be at. Even a dangling participle on that sentence. You know, you might want to play guitar a little bit. You might want to do something else a little bit. But do you want to put 10,000 hours into it so that you're really good at it? Not everything is worth that kind of commitment. And the wisdom is knowing what is and what isn't. In my early song leading experience, I was expected by some to measure up to their outward standards of perfection, and that discouraged me. Whereas my friend John helped me and encouraged me because he had the right attitude, and he saw that my attitude was right. And it didn't take 10,000 hours to become a good song leader. There are some things that you can do a lot less time to master. But in the parable of the Pharisee and the publican, Christ said that because of the difference in attitude, the publican, rather than the Pharisee, went down to his house justified. That's interesting, isn't it? He went down to his house justified. And in the matter of playing guitar, the principle is shown that not everything you do has to be or should be worth the time and effort it takes to really be good at it. I had intended to take my guitar and play 3 chords. I'm not going to do that. I'm afraid I'll drop this, whoever's guitar this is, and we'll be in more trouble than we want to be. So at any rate, let me go to conclusion here. Final points. Just as I was called upon to lead songs several years ago with no previous training or experience, we're all called to be something we've never done before, something for which we didn't receive advanced training in our early years, to become the sons of God and a kingdom of priests. We should focus on attitude, brethren. Don't discourage others or yourself by expecting or demanding, as the Pharisees did, full and immediate compliance with their outward standards of perfection. Rather, encourage one another with patience, mercy, love. Help one another to grow and to overcome. Conversion is a lifelong process, and it will take all of our lives. So there's nothing in this life which is more important than completing our calling to become sons of God. Commit to investing 10,000 hours of your life to become more like your Heavenly Father. It is something worth doing, and it's something worth doing right. But also remember, it is something worth doing poorly at first. Don't let your lack of expertise discourage you as you travel along that road to become sons of God.